What we're learning here today is how to apply drip edge to an inside and outside corner, and as well as flashing onto two different surfaces, wood and concrete or block, same deal. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that everything below the drip edge is filled solid and it's a smooth surface. So you need to make sure that everything's flat and smooth. All your inside corners, make sure that's all flat. When your drip edge sits down, you want it to lay flat, and then you want it to dust it off. For some jobs, they require an adhesive underneath the flashing material, which is this material right here. Some do not. This is the drip edge. That's basically how it's going to go on there. We will cut it and make it fit. And we'll give you a 45-degree angle and make sure everything laps. First thing you want to make sure is you have good snips to cut this material so that when you snip it, that you don't end up bending it. This is an old pair that when you try to cut the material, you can see that it bends it, kinking it. If you have something you take care of, this shouldn't be the same snips that you would use to cut bands for brick or anything like that, so that when you cut across it, you get a straight, nice cut. First thing we're gonna do is we are going to do an outside corner. Okay. You wanna make sure that your laborers do not walk on this or set this in an area where it can be tramped on or bent, because the flatter it is, the easier it is to work with. So for my 45 corner, I will be cutting back at a 45, basically. It just has to match. You don't have to draw it. It just has to match. So when I go back here, I cut it about back to there, and then I want to cut it straight from here in. So I flip it around because you need to have it lap on the corner. And I cut straight across at a 90. Sometimes you can just wiggle it a little bit and it'll come apart. And then that'll be the start of this side of the 45-degree corner. One thing you want to make sure is that on the end of this, that's sharp because it's a 45. You want to take your snips across it at the same 45-degree angle, but at a 90 to this angle, 90 it, just the tip of that, and you take it off like that, gives you a nice corner. So now, the next one will be the other side. So you need it to lap, so you have to bring it past this corner to your 45, which will be right there. Set your 45-degree corner right there. So that's about where I'm gonna pass it. That way I know that in this area, I have enough lap on the inside. Notice that I didn't cut it all the way at a 45 this way, so that when I cut a 45 to match this, it will lap this triangle area here, and it'll be very self-explanatory once we get it done. So I marked that about right there. And then I come back in at an opposite 45, same way. And I only come in that far. Looks to be about an inch. And then I take this and I come this way. Try to line it up so that when I snip it, I just do that, and now that's snipped off. Okay, so now I got a matching 45 right there, but the only thing I have to do now is make sure that I don't have a tip. Sometimes it matches up nice enough to where you don't have to take that off, but I'm still gonna take off that little bit of tip just so that if some young person walks past with sandals on, they don't get their ankle cut. So I cut that off right there, matching this with this. Got a lap. If you check out my lap's from here to here. In this corner, we're gonna do the same thing, all right? We're going to cut just this edge off so that my lap comes all the way back, and when I cross my other piece, I'll show you how this works. So let me mark it first. And most of the time I would already have glued this down because normally in the specs they show that this drip edge should be glued down, but that's something you have to go over with your project manager, and you can see how squared off that is just by cutting in and then taking that tip off. Okay, so this point here, right here, is where I want to cut off my flange. You can't just flatten it or you bend it all up. So what I do, same thing, come in just like that, come back to here. Right. So now, there's my piece, okay? So that's my outside corner going into an inside corner, okay? So now we have to make sure, and see, sometimes when you cut that, this flares up a little bit. Sometimes you can take the tip of your, and just bend that back down a little bit so it looks like the factory made it, okay? So once we get that down, now I have to go this way, all right? So what I want to do is come past the same amount, okay? And if you have extra, it's not a big deal, all right? But right here is where you want to make another 45, but not this way like an outside. You want to go this way, like this. And when you do that, same thing, you want to use that and then make sure that you have a lap, lapping your, make sure everything's flat. Now when this comes to here, you can see that since I went like a 45, it follows this angle here, okay, making it almost seamless. And you have your 4 inches a lap, or 3 inches a lap, 3 inches a lap. So now what I'm gonna do now is I am going to caulk this down. So we don't want water coming up and under. A lot of specs tell you to do that. Some don't. If they don't tell you to do that, then it gets a little more difficult because these things tend to move around as you're flashing. If that's the case, what you want to do is, as you put your flashing on, you want to leave the backing paper that keeps it from being sticky down here on this so that you can get your flashing on, and I'll explain that to you as we do it, okay? As you get this on, if you're not caulked down, you know, it makes it movable. So, but when you have caulked it down, it's a little different. You still follow the same process, but this is a little more difficult if you don't caulk it down first. So we'll go from, being that the lap goes from here to there to here, we want to start with this piece. We're going to take off the pieces we cut. Again, I'm going to clean and make sure I have no debris. And then I want to brush it again. It's important to brush it, especially if you're caulking it down, so that you get a nice seal. You need to use the preferred caulking from whatever specs you have. And what I do is I caulk down, put a caulking bead across here. Same on this side. Okay. The first one goes like so. And what you can do is take a brick, because you are going to be on a brick job or when you're doing this, so if you want to hold it down, to hold something in place, hold it in place enough so see I still have movement, because once I put this piece on, I'm going to have to adjust this 45 to make it look perfect. Okay, but what I want to do here is on the lap, I want to do caulking. So I want this to have caulk. All right. In fact, I'm going to go into this corner and caulk this as well. Water is the enemy, and we try to keep water out. Okay. So now once I lay this one down, it should be close, but I'm gonna fine tune it right here. And once I get all that in place, it holds with that caulking. The blocker dry, so it should set up pretty quick. Same deal here. I'm gonna come across here, see how far my lap is, where I have to put my caulking. We don't wanna waste any money. Every little bit of caulking counts. It's expensive. And then I'm gonna get on here. I try to make sure that I get the bends out of it so that I don't have to hold it down too much. It should be straight when the laborers hand it to you, but it never is. Okay, so now you got caulking. Pretty seamless. If you have any caulking in these, you can always push it into the crevices to make sure that they get no water. Right here, I got a hole. You should have no voids underneath your flashing. Makes it pull water. So the first thing I do if I do see any holes is I get mud, which is readily available on a masonry site, and I fill that in. I'm not too much worried about what I get on top of everything else, but I am worried about having anywhere water can sit, anything uneven. If you have someplace water can sit, it'll find its way there and it'll sit there and it'll cause problems for the masonry. While I'm getting my flashing ready, I should make my drip edge flat. Flat enough that check, make sure nothing moved. Because once you get this flashing stuck to this metal, it's over. If you mess up, if something's messed up, you got to start over.